A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
You got f***ing grow, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast, available live in video form at twitch.tv/Gallant Says or youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Also in podcast form, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. It is Wednesday, January 25th of 2023. If you're watching this thing live, you're probably thinking to yourself, Paul, what the fuck happened to your face? Well, I don't want to seem like I'm going full Britney Spears here, but I thought to myself, you know, I would like to have a new look. And I have not shaved this beard, which was a mustache as well, all the way down to the skin since probably mid-November of 2017. It has been a while. I've had some sort of scruff ever since then. And I keep on looking at myself in the mirror or on this Twitch stream and thinking to myself, whoa, who's that guy? Oh, yeah, it's you. It's been that long. Very, very white face. Did I make a mistake? I don't know. I'm not as excited about it right now, except for one thing. I do look younger, so that's nice. Maybe I'll get carded at the bar again. Maybe I'll get carded at movies again. How about that? So I wanted to start off with this. We are generally an NFL-focused show, and I think you guys know that I love the NFL. I grew up in Massachusetts. I thought for the longest time that there was nothing better in life than going to a Patriots game, whether at Foxborough Stadium or at Gillette Stadium, the new one. And some of my favorite memories ever have to do with being there specifically for conference championships. In 2003-2004, the Patriots made it to the AFC Championship game where they hosted the Indianapolis Colts. They won that game 24-14. And it was an awesome game because it started snowing in the middle of it, and the Patriots just beat the shit out of a Colts team that was soft, indoor-based. Ty Law picked off Peyton Manning 3 times. It's probably the best performance by a defensive back in playoff history, though some might argue Asante Samuel Jr. in the first half against Trevor Lawrence now holds that honor given how quickly he did everything. But they picked him off 4 times, and everyone was just so excited to see the Patriots win a conference championship game at home for the first time at that point in time since 1996. Only the second time ever. For a lot of people, that's the closest that you're ever going to get to a Super Bowl. And it's honestly probably a better fan experience than a Super Bowl to see your team win the conference at home. You get speeches afterwards, and there are no other fans there that you could potentially find yourself getting into a kerfuffle with on the way out. Or maybe not a kerfuffle, but I think some of us get a little bit annoyed when one group of people experiences happiness around us and the other is miserable around us. So that's one of the best places to experience something like that. And when the Patriots beat the San Diego Chargers in the 2007-2008 AFC Championship game to improve to 18-0, that was something special too. We all thought the Patriots were going to win that Super Bowl and go 19-0. They didn't, but I mean, 18-0 is something that had never been done in NFL history before. They did make history in that game. They just didn't, win the Super Bowl, which the Miami Dolphins love to remind everybody about, even though they played less games. Whatever, it's fine. I'm not bitter about it. I'm just saying that those are two of my favorite sports memories. And it seems like the NFL was very close to using a tragedy to their advantage once again. Now, luckily, Damar Hamlin is okay. I know there's some tinfoil hatters out there that say, well, I haven't seen Damar Hamlin. Fuck off. I don't even want to deal with you people. I just don't. I have no patience for you. If you really want to spend that much time looking into a conspiracy, then leave this and go back to the internet and keep Googling or keep watching terrible YouTube videos. Maybe you'll start believing that the world is flat as well. I want to go back into looking at just how the NFL was potentially going to use Damar Hamlin's injury that paused the game between the Bills and Bengals on Monday Night Football a couple of weeks ago. They were going to use that game and the possible neutral site AFC Championship game that would have taken place had the Buffalo Bills beaten Cincinnati. Thank God Cincinnati won. If that took place in Atlanta between the Bills and the Chiefs, bet your bottom dollar that would have become a thing sooner rather than later. And it might become a thing sooner rather than later anyway. Albert Breer of SportsIllustrated.com, who you might know as being the number one defender of Bill O'Brien in the past, said this in a piece that he wrote. I have 2 points to make on neutral site conference championship games potentially becoming a permanent part of our pro football reality. 1, I think the idea of doing it and taking the games out of the home cities is a complete abomination. And 2, I think it's inevitable that the owners will start talking seriously about it and probably sooner than later. Here are some reasons per Breer in that piece that he wrote for SportsIllustrated.com. In covering the NFL, to always follow the money and the revenue trail is what led me to my destination on this one. After talking to a few people about it this weekend, it's pretty easy to see where the league could capitalize financially on rotating the games throughout different cities and creating a setup not unlike the college football playoffs arrangement, where bowl games serve as the site of the 2 semifinals. How would they make money on them? In a few different ways. First, it'd make it easier to slap naming rights on the game, something presumably you'd never do with the Super Bowl. You could slap naming rights on the conference championship games very easily, and it would not involve moving the game to a neutral site. You could say the exact same thing about the actual Super Bowl, and I don't give a fuck about those things having names slapped on them. We have sports jerseys in baseball, in basketball, getting bigger and bigger corporate logos on them. I can deal with that. I can. It's annoying, yes. Hopefully the logos don't get too big. Eventually they will probably look a lot like what you see in European soccer, where jerseys generally have the team brand on the front as opposed to the actual team nickname. You know, like the Chevrolet? No, that's Manchester United. Or at least was at some point in recent history. Anyway, continues Breer. It'd also be easier to get top dollar for such naming rights if you're selling the site of the game as part of it too. I guess that makes sense. Second, you'd have cities bidding for the neutral site games, and it'd allow for places such as Detroit, Minneapolis, or Indianapolis, cities that might get a Super Bowl once but possibly never again, a chance to capitalize on having a Super Bowl quality stadium. Fuck that. They would make you go and travel to Detroit, Minneapolis, or Indianapolis to watch a conference championship game. At least Minneapolis is decent and Detroit's on the upswing. They'd make you go to Indianapolis voluntarily. Fuck that. Fuck the Midwest while we're at it. Sorry. Don't want to go there during January if I'm not watching a game where my team is playing a home game against the opposition because it got home field advantage for that game. A chance to capitalize on having a Super Bowl quality stadium. It could also help prepare cities to host a Super Bowl or help the league evaluate cities that might bid on one. Because the NFL is a bunch of cheap whores, and they would love to have everybody bid on them in the same way that the Olympic Committee and the World Cup, FIFA, bid on hosting a event in their place, like you saw with Qatar, where they're using slave labor to build stadiums. They don't have the infrastructure to support all the guests that came. They didn't have alcohol at the place. FIFA thought that was okay. Justin Simpson on youtube.com/Paul Gallant writes, even the NFL isn't dumb enough to change a precedent that originated due to a player having a cardiac event. You, sir, are overestimating them. And the thing is, the NFL could do this, and it's not going to affect any bottom dollar. They will make more money off of it, and we will all eventually forget. This is why we need to dig in our heels. If you give these fuckers an inch, they will take it and run with it. And again, this is why it's so great that the Bengals won that game. Even if you are a member of Bills Mafia, imagine that you finally get to an AFC Championship game, which you're playing on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs, and then all of a sudden the next year, you're not going to be able to have an AFC Championship game in Buffalo. Like, the idea that Buffalo would never get an AFC Championship game, even if I'm not the biggest fan of Bills fans or the Bills themselves, that is unconscionable. That is a place that deserves to host it with its authentic home field atmosphere. The NFL doesn't have much of it. Are we really going to squeeze it all away to try to emulate college fucking football? Breer's piece continues in Sports Illustrated. The NFL could control and sell the suites and tickets. As it is now, teams generally sell those to their season ticket holders and suite holders. Oh boy. The inventory you could have for sponsors and networks and visitors is taken to a large degree by the sponsors and the ticket holders of the home team, says one source connected to the league office. At a neutral site, everyone would be free of such obligations. So the NFL could sell all of that in advance or use them with sponsors and corporate partners more efficiently. So let's just take all the fucking atmosphere out of the game. It is cool that there is a do or die game to determine each conference that takes place at the home of the team with the better record. Not only would this continue to diminish the NFL's regular season as it continues to expand and balloon on that front, this would also take away a large part of what home field advantage actually is. If you get home field advantage, you want to play that game in front of your fans, to give your defense an advantage, to make crowd noise a part of it. And football is still a game that should be considering the actual fan experience that's a part of it. It should. I know, there's basketball, there's baseball. Basketball and baseball, they're different. College football is where it's at its best. The NFL, still pretty good. Depends on the place that you go to. I think that places like Buffalo, like Pittsburgh, like Denver are fantastic fan experiences. Green Bay, to go a little bit further. These are places that are uniquely regional and should be kept that way. Bob Hulsley on youtube.com/Paul Gallant says, leave it the way it is. I love bad weather games, but the NFL will want sterile climate-controlled sites, not games that add an element of additional obstacles. No more ice balls. I feel the exact same way as you, Bob. I feel the exact same way as you. Legitimately am concerned about this. And again, I grew up in the Northeast, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I loved going to games at Gillette Stadium to see snow fall down. It was so cool to go to multiple playoff games where all of a sudden, before the Patriots played the Colts, snow started falling, and you knew the Patriots had the game won in that moment right there. It also was pretty cool to see the Patriots go on the road to Pittsburgh a couple of times and shut everyone up in that crowd. And yet, this is something they're thinking about taking away. And they had the opportunity to take it away because of a cardiac event, as Justin Simpson said a little bit earlier. It's fucked, isn't it? But it was possible. Oh, boy. And the sterile climate-controlled sites thing, that is something that some of the nerds online have been pushing for. And I just don't get it. You know, every single Saturday when I was at Syracuse University, I would go out with a bunch of friends and we would play football on a couple of fields on campus. There was one field by the women's building. There was another field by Sadler and Lawrence and Hall. Great fields. And we would play intense tackle football games, even when it snowed. And playing in the snow was fucking fun. You know, obviously, you were freezing afterwards and you needed to take a 2-hour shower to warm back up, but I am concerned that this is a possibility. If Albert Breer is putting this out there on SportsIllustrated.com, this is a guy who used to work for the NFL Network. This is a guy who is connected to the league. This is a guy who hears something and he realizes that it is a matter of time before this could potentially take place. per Sports Illustrated. I can also say that owners have indeed talked about this over the years, so it's not a new idea. It's just one that hadn't yet gotten to the point where it's ready to be voted on. But the pieces are in place to make this happen, continue to write Breer. The NFL already controls the conference title games. So, where Park Avenue has generally allowed for the teams to be true to their suite holders and season ticket holders, they could easily pull back on that if owners see fit. Additionally, going through the Bills-Chiefs scenario the past few weeks gave them a sort of dry run to find potential issues. So if this game had taken place, they could have given the actual fucking dry run. They could have done it. Terrifying. Largo Butt says, loving getting a Sacha Baron Cohen vibe with the fresh shave. But I looked like Borat yesterday when I had the mustache. Huh. I like that. I'll take that over Rachel Maddow. For those who don't know, if you're tuning in just now, your boy's shaved. He is freshly clean shaven. So that's the NFL. They're fucking shit up. How about baseball? How are they doing it? If you've listened to me enough, you would know that I am not a fan of baseball writers. I generally find them to be stodgy. I don't think that they have personality, and I think that their lack of personality, flair, creativity is one of the reasons that the game has slowly been dying since the steroid era saved it in the late 1990s. I don't think that the Hall of Fame is something that we discuss on a regular basis, but we do discuss it every single year, and we usually discuss it for the absolute wrong reasons. We're talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame because player X or player Y didn't get in. Guess what? Yet again, two of the best players that we have seen over the last 30 years, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, did not get in as part of the senior committee to elect baseball players to Hall of Fame. Fred McGriff got in. Fred McGriff. Nothing wrong with Fred McGriff. The crime dog has some pretty impressive statistics. I feel like if you were to put him on the ballot of other players that were just voted on, that he would have a pretty damn good chance of getting in, but he didn't for whatever reason. It took him a while to get in. But there were others on this ballot that was just voted on. Todd Helton, you might remember him, Colorado Rockies, great hitter. Billy Wagner, great closer with the Houston Astros for a long period of time during some very important years for that franchise. Andrew Jones with the Atlanta Braves, Gary Sheffield with the Marlins, with the Braves, with the New York Yankees, Carlos Beltran with the Astros, with the Cardinals, with other teams, the Houston Astros, Alex Rodriguez, we all know him, Manny Ramirez, Cleveland Indians, the Boston Red Sox. These are guys that I will likely remember for the rest of my life. Maybe some less so than others. Todd Helton, I remember, because Todd Helton was like the most terrifying baseball player in a video game that you would ever go up against. But the other ones, like I will never forget those names. Scott Rowland is somewhat forgettable. And it's no fault of his own that his day of celebration is being ruined by baseball writers because they elected him into the Hall of Fame. And I'm happy for him. I saw this video where he told the news to his dad and his mom, and they're really emotional. So I'm happy for Scott Rowland. And I feel bad that people are saying today, wait, what the fuck? Scott Rowland got in? But that's what happened. Scott Rowland is the only person that got elected into a Hall of Fame ballot that again featured Todd Helton, Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, Carlos Beltran, Alex Rodriguez, and Manny Ramirez. And if you really want to go further, Jeff Kent, Andy Pettit, Bobby Abreu. Rowland seems like a nice guy. And Rowland has had some important hits in history. I think some people remember the Game 7 home run that he had off of Roger Clemens with the Cardinals against the Houston Astros. There have been some other moments as well for Scott Rowland, who is historically one of the better fielders in third base history and per metrics has one of the better wins above replacement WAR stats of any baseball player historically. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made that he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know that I would make it over any of those guys. I definitely wouldn't make it over Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. But that's not what this is about. We need to figure out the Baseball Writers Association of America's process because it's just fucking random. And as someone pointed out, Justin Simpson on youtube.com/Paul Gallant, Hall of Media favorites, it does feel that way. People didn't like Bonds. They thought he was an asshole. Roger Clemens, they think he cheated. Strong argument to be made that he did take some PEDs, but a lot of people who follow the sport don't care about the steroids as much. Maybe some old players do, and maybe the writers feel a sense of loyalty to those players. But again, let's just get back to this specific fact. The first year that Scott Rowland was eligible to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, he got 10% of ballots. The minimum to stay on the ballots was 5% of votes. How the fuck, from 2018 to 2023, do you go from having 10% to 76% of votes on the ballot? What has changed? What is different? What is happening? What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. The Baseball Writers Association of America was asleep at the wheel. Because if you take a look at the rationale written up as to why Rowland is a Hall of Famer at ESPN.com, you'll see Rowland ranks 5th in wins above replacement among career third basemen, according to BaseballReference.com. One reason Rowland's case gathered momentum so quickly was because of his standing in advanced metrics. So baseball writers who vote into the Hall of Fame have all year to look this shit up. And if you've looked in the past, it's become somewhat of a joke to people who still have votes into the Baseball Writers Association of America. It is something that if you have the honor of voting on that or the Heisman Committee or the NFL MVP or any of those things, you should take it seriously. I am jealous of the people who have it. Even if I don't take sports as seriously as I used to, I would love to have that honor, especially in the NFL. I probably will never get it. I understand why. But if you're a baseball writer, shouldn't you do your due diligence, especially if you're someone who is paying whatever monthly fee, yearly fee it is to be in the Baseball Writers Association of America? Shouldn't you know about the fucking advanced metrics? Shouldn't you do some research on your own? You got a whole off season to do it. You got plenty of time to do it. What have you been doing over the last couple of months? What sports have you been watching? What sports have you been covering? How did wins above replacement in 2023 become a bigger deal than it was in 2018? Because it existed then. That's what I don't get. We've known about this statistic for a while. Why all of a sudden is Scott Rowland's wins above replacement something that gives you more of a boner than what it did in 2018? Like, what the fuck's changed? There's more of an acceptance of analytics? Are we talking about an acceptance that goes from 10% to 76.3%? A 66% increase in people who buy into the idea of an analytics or something like that? What the fuck? 66% of you changed your mind? That's what I have a big issue with. And I feel bad for Scott Rowland because he gets dicked over in the process by these writers who changed what was necessary to be a Hall of Famer, all the while continuously sticking up their nose, thumbing their nose, flipping off the guys who deserve to be in. Anyway. So there you go, guys. I just don't get it. Every single year, it gives me a little bit of energy to put together a segment. So I will thank the baseball writers for continuously providing content. But at a certain point, they got to look at themselves in the mirror and realize that they're fucking this up and they're fucking over players in the process. Not just the guys they don't vote in. They're fucking over the guys that they do vote in. There should be a day that Scott Rowland celebrates, and I mean, I hope he's just staying off the internet today, because he should do that. One last thing before we hit the road. The Last of Us television show on HBO. It's really good. I'm enjoying it thus far. The second episode came out on Sunday. On the second episode, we opened up with a scene that takes place in, I believe, Indonesia, Jakarta. And you see this old lady at a restaurant. She's sipping her tea, and some guy in the military comes up to her and says, you need to come with us. You're wondering what the hell's going on, but you had heard in the previous episode, if you were paying attention, a radio broadcast or a television broadcast that was talking about how things had gotten a little bit crazy. And then all of a sudden, this military guy says, look, we just found a dead body with a type of fungus surviving inside it that we have never seen surviving in a human being before. And whatever that fungus is, the person who had it proceeded to bite 3 people before eventually being shot to death by authorities. Those 3 to 4 people also changed in the same way, like the fungi, and they had to be killed as well. 14 people who worked at this bread factory, which I guess is a perfect place for fungi to grow, all those guys, what they did was they went missing. So this military guy says, do we have a vaccine? What can we do? And the lady's like, yo, we're fucked. And then you go back to the present day and you see Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, and Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey. And they are walking around the wastes of a bombed out downtown Boston, which is a fascinating sight to behold. And you see them wandering around, and you see them establish chemistry in dialogue and blah, 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 you know, the same usual stuff. It's very clear that the relationship between Joel and Ellie, for those who play the video game especially, is going to be, it's going to be really important, right? So they're wandering through Boston. There's a couple of moments where you learn things about the, I'm forgetting what they're called. What's the nickname for the zombies in Last of Us? Nickname for zombies in Last of Us. Clickers, I think, right? Yeah, clickers. They're called clickers. And they can essentially communicate with one another through connected fungi in the ground. And you notice that they all sort of like move in unison with one another. It's pretty cool, but pretty terrifying, especially when they all start running. I guess what we know about them to this point, and I haven't played the video game, so sorry, but they can't see anything, but they can hear things. And say someone steps on a piece of connected fungi, whatever this fungi is called off the top of my head, I don't remember it. If someone steps on it, all of a sudden their location has been given away, and a ton of people are going to just fucking zombie fungi people are going to just fucking bum rush that area. And what I really liked about this first episode, and here comes a spoiler alert horn here, because I don't want to ruin anything for you guys. Let's play one more time just in case. They run into a problem. They're trying to drop Ellie off with the terrorist organization. Sorry, I should have written notes down. Terrorist organization in Last of Us. Oh wow. If you enter in terrorist organization, it's like butterflies or something. Butterfly organization, Last of Us. This is great riveting radio, isn't it? Fireflies. Anyway, Joel and Tess are instructed to bring Ellie to meet with the Fireflies. They meet with the Fireflies, only to find that these Fireflies are dead bodies. Like everyone's dead. They get to the spot where they're supposed to meet them, and they clearly had someone get bitten, and they shot each other to death. So one of them, I guess, wakes up. Joel is forced to shoot it, and that death and step wake up a shit ton of them that are hanging out around Faneuil Hall in downtown Boston. They all come running to the building that all three of them are in. You find out that Tess has been bitten. Tess has sort of had a change of heart over the course of the episode, going from somebody who clearly only is out for herself to somebody who believes in maybe that there is some sort of sense of purpose, and that bringing Ellie from one point to another is going to bring her some sort of redemption. And she reveals that she's been bitten, and she's like, I'm going to blow myself up to stop the rush. And she does. I like this because we need television shows to go back to mercilessly killing people off at random moments, because it does add gravitas. And a lot of those shows, when a guy gets killed off, he ends up getting brought back. We've clearly seen that a lot. Say Dragon Ball Z, a show I grew up watching. Game of Thrones towards the end. It did it at first, but then it stopped doing that. I think it's a great feature of a show, and I like that there's the possibility going forward that this could be a show that maybe now outside of Ellie and outside of Joel, characters are going to get killed off on the regular. The Walking Dead did that at first too, then they stopped after a while. Characters eventually develop plot armor when a show's been going on for a long period of time. But when you have a show that's moving quickly through the first season, you should do this as much as you can. I've enjoyed the show thus far. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. Get yourself an HBO subscription. Anyway, big thanks to everybody who tuned into today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast, which you can get live weekdays, 1 to 1:30 Central Time on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. We've actually been pretty regular with it over the last couple of days. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud as well, if you want to listen to the audio version of this. We're getting closer and closer to conference championship. We'll talk more about that on tomorrow's show. And also, I'll have some observations, I guess, from the Houston Sports Awards. That's why I shaved myself for the most part tonight. I want to look a little bit different as I get up into a tux. Anyway, so long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful Wednesday.